Hello everyone, my name's Lewis from setupforvolleyball.com, and today I'm going to be going over the 5-1 rotations when you're the serving team. If you're after the 5-1 rotations when you're in serve-receive, do look on my channel as I dropped that video not that long ago, so you should be able to find it relatively easily, but just to help you guys out, I will put it at the top of the screen right now. If you enjoy the content and it helps you, please do consider liking and giving that one a thumbs up and sharing it with anybody that you think it might help. Aside from that, if you enjoy this sort of content, please do consider subscribing, as we're going to be dropping lots of content exactly like this. So without further ado, let's get into these rotations. Okay guys, so we're on a computer now. Just quickly before we dive into the 5-1 rotation guide for when you are the serving team, I just want to give you a quick background on the 5-1 formation, just in case you aren't aware. So the 5-1 volleyball formation is arguably the most popular formation used across sort of intermediate and advanced levels. It's not seen very often in beginner levels just because of how complicated the rotations are. Obviously when you get them down and nailed, they aren't that difficult, but they are certainly confusing for beginners, at least they were for me. So I feel confident with them now, but there are 6 rotations in this formation, whereas the other 2 only have 3, so it's definitely more complicated. And the 5 in the 5-1 is the number of hitters, and the 1 in the 5-1 is the number of setters on court. Same with the other formations, so in the 4-2 you have 4 hitters, 2 setters, etc. So some of the advantages of the 5-1 is it provides the most setting options generally, so you have obviously 5 other hitters at all times, which you do kind of get in the 6-2, but for me the 5-1 is a much more efficient way of running it. And another great thing with the 5-1 is that the setter is the same person every time, so it really allows all of the other players on the court to get a really good relationship with that setter. For example, when you're trying to run a quick middle, it's really difficult to run a quick middle and be on time, have the setter the right height. So just having that constant relationship really helps teams in attack. So another thing that I want to get out of the way quickly is that although I said the rotations are confusing, the actual rotations themselves I don't think are confusing. The thing that's confusing with rotations is knowing where to stack, so that being where you stand on the court when the ball's about to be served. So you might stack 2 players into a corner to get them out of the way so that the passers can see, but you're not hindering anybody else's rotation. So I don't think the actual rotations themselves are difficult, because for the most part you're always just going to the same 2 spots on the court. So when you're in the front row, you pretty much always run to the same spot, and when you're in the back row, you pretty much always run to the same spot. So whichever position you play, just focus on them when we go through this rotation guide. So starting out, this would be a common starting lineup for a team running a 5-1. So you would have your setter back to serve the first ball, so that when you do receive the ball, you can have your 3 attackers at the front of the net ready to go, and also 3 attackers blocking. So if we were going to line up in this manner to start the set off, the setter would obviously come back to serve, and then for me, I'm having the outside and the middle stack like this. Now, lots of coaches will have the middle player playing in the 6th position here, and they will have them at deep 6. I've said it in the other videos, and I'll continue to stress the point. I like having an outside at 6. For me, having an outside in the 6th position just allows your setter to have another outlet. If the pass isn't very good and your setter is struggling, they can just put that ball up in the middle of the court, near the 3-metre line, and just allow that outside player, who's generally going to be a stronger hitter, to come through and attack that backcourt ball. That's not to say that middles can't do it, but in the games that I generally play, our outside is a stronger hitter from the backcourt, or not on the middle of the net, than the middle player is. So I like to have that outside at the back. So that's how the back players would stand. So for me, like I said, I'm going to have my middle and my outside stack here. And then at the front of the net, obviously we want to get everybody into the correct position. So we want the middle to stand up nice and close to this net, because ultimately if they overpass, the middle can reach it, or if they run a quick attack, the middle is there ready to block. Your opposite is going to stand to the left of the middle because they can't cross to the right, and your outside is going to stand to the right of the middle because they can't cross to the left. So if we move on to the next page, this is what we've got. This is what we've just went through. So you've got your middle up nice and tight to the net, ready to react to anything that may come quickly. Your opposite standing nice and close to this middle player with a gap between the middle and the outside so the opposite can run through, and the outside stood nice and close to the middle player as well so they can also run. So this is how I've got them rotating. So you have your middle again nice and close, your opposite up just nice and close behind them, ready to run over to this right hand side, and your outside nice and close to your middle but not crossing them, ready to run to the left hand side the second that ball is served. In the backcourt, we're going to have the middle run to 5. As I've just said, I like to have the middle at 5 and the outside at 6, but if your coach plays this differently, just swap these two around. So as an outside you can just stay over here, and as a middle you could just stay here. So setter's going to serve, step on court. The second this setter serves the ball, outside is going to drop back into this deep 6 position, middle's going to step up to 5, outside is going to run round here to 4, and opposite is going to dart across here to 2. When we have finished rotating, this is how we would be set up. Outside, middle and opposite all ready to block once they've read the set. Middle is in this sharp angle behind the middle here at the 5 position, and the setter is at this sharp angle here. So the main reason that we would want these to be our base positions is, say that they are hitting from this side here. So we have our middle and our outside blocking. By the time our middle and outside are blocked, they're probably going to take up to about here, which leaves this angle would be the hardest sort of angle that they could hit from without doing some clever trickery and squeezing it down the line. So we'll put these players in these angles so that they are ready to receive these hard cross-court hits. And then you've got your outside player here, nice and deep, so they cover anything that's nice and deep on the court. So any roll shots, any tips to the back corners, or at higher level it tends to be a lot of hitting off the top of the block, so it'll hit the block, get a touch, go nice and high, the outside can read this, sweep it up, get the pass back into the setter. So that is the end of rotation 1. So let's move on to rotation 2. So rotation 2, we have all rotated one place in a clockwise direction, so the setter that was at this position has moved across, the middle that was originally at 6 has moved to 5, and so on and so forth. So your outside player now is going to be the player to come back and take the serve. Now we want our setter to still be playing defense at this 1 spot here, and for me I want my middle to be in this 5 spot here. So all we would do is, because the outside is off the court, they aren't affected by the rotation rule. So the setter doesn't have to worry about being on the left hand side of this outside, they can just go and stand in position, so can the middle. Outside is just going to serve the ball here and they can just step onto the court. Back row is nice and easy in this one, and the front row is also nice and easy because you already have your outside in the correct spot. The only 2 players that aren't in the correct spot is your opposite and your middle. But if you bring your middle to the centre of the court and bring them up by the net, all the opposite has to do is just stand just off this left shoulder and then they can just dart straight to their position. So the only players that need to worry about rotating in this one really is the middle obviously needs to move over, but essentially they can stand in the same place. So the only person that really needs to worry about rotating is this opposite player, who is just going to dart straight into this gap here. Again, outside is just going to serve and step on court into this position. So after we have rotated, this is how we would end up. You will notice that this looks exactly the same as the previous final image, and that's because for these first 3 rotations these base positions will always be the same. So that one is a nice and easy one. Only one player really needs to worry about rotating and everybody else can just make sure they're stood in the right places. So moving on to rotation 3. So the setter has now moved round again, as is the rest of the team. So the setter that was at position 6 is now 5, middle who was at 5 is now 4 and gone front court. So in this rotation, we have our middle who is going to step back and serve. And as I've said, the middle for me is playing in the 5 position. So rather than serve all the way over here and then have to run around everybody, because they're not affected by the rotation, if they feel confident serving from this side, it just makes more sense they serve from this side and they can just walk straight onto court into their position rather than serving over here and having to run all the way around. So I've put the middle serving in this position just because it makes a lot more sense and it's much easier for them to rotate into the correct area. In the back row, we have our outside in this middle position already, so they'll just take a nice deep step back in the court, so they are at deep 6. and the setter needs to get across the court into position 1. So because they're not affected by this middle, because they're off the court, all they need to do is stand just to the left of this outside and just be ready to run. So the second that ball's served, setter can move over here. In the front row this time, we have our opposite in the correct position, and this time our middle and our outside are the wrong way around. Again, the middle is just going to step up to the centre of that net, nice and close. Outside is going to stand just off their right shoulder, so they can just run straight to this 4 place. So if I move over, again you've got middle server, outside and setter in the back row. Outside is already in the correct place, setter's just going to line up nice and close, dart across. Opposite's already in the right place, middle's going to get nice and tight to the net, towards the middle so they don't have to move very much. And then the outside just has to dart into this position here. So these would be the rotations. Outside runs to this left 4 place. Setter nice and close to this outside, runs to 1, middle. Again, they might want to serve from over here if this is how they prefer it, but they have got a long run then afterwards, so I've just put them serving over here, and all they have to do is step onto the court. As I said before, you will recognise this because it has been the same for the last 2. Outside at 4, middle at 3, opposite at 2, setter at 1, deep 6 for our outside, and 5 for our second middle. That is rotation 3. So on to rotation 4, this is where we start to see a little bit of a change in the base positions after we have rotated, but I'll get into that in a second. So obviously the setter now is gone to the front row, so we've lost out on our opposite hit, so we are now down to 2 hitters in the front line, and we are down to 3 backcourt players who are just solely backcourt players. So in this we have our setter at 4, middle at 3 and outside at 2, and the only person in the correct place in this lineup is this middle player right here. So the middle player is going to, again, stand nice and close to the net because we always want them ready to react to the block or the overpass. Outside is going to hang just off their left shoulder, and then the setter is going to hang just off their left shoulder. Oh, sorry, I think I said that wrong. The outside is going to be off their right shoulder, the setter is going to be off their left shoulder. And then the back row, our middle and our outside are the wrong way around, as you can see here. So the outside is just going to push over to this deep 6 position, probably just a step over to the left, and the middle is just going to stand ready to run into this 5 spot. So opposite serving, outside of middle stacked nice and close, making sure the middle stays to the right of the outside. At the front court, we've got the middle nice and close and in the middle of the court, already stood in the correct position. Outside just off their right shoulder, ready to run left, and setter just off their left shoulder, ready to run right. So this is what the rotations would look like. Middle stays, outside runs left, setter runs round and to the right, so you then have your outside, middle, setter. In the back row, the opposite is just going to serve and step on court into this position, and the outside and the middle in the back row are going to switch, but as I said, if we stack this outside player and the middle player nice and close together in the back row, all the middle has to do is just run straight across the outside and get into this base position. So this will be the first time that we've seen these base positions, but really the only thing that's changing is the setter and the opposite. The opposite is going to take the place of the setter in the back row, and the setter is going to take the place of the opposite in the front row. So moving on to rotation 5. So rotation 5, the setter is now moved to the middle of the court. So we've got the setter at 3, the middle at 2, and the outside in the correct spot at 4. So in the front row, the outside is going to obviously stay in their correct spot. The middle again is going to push over to this centre of the court here, nice and close to the net, and the setter is just going to hug their left shoulder, ready to run behind them and get into this 2 spot ready to block. In the back court, it's a nice and easy one because the outside is going to be serving, and because the outside is going to be serving, the opposite and the middle can just get into their positions without worrying about the rotations. And then again, all the outside is going to do is just serve here, step on. So as we can see here, middle and the setter will stack in the center position, middle will stay where they are, outside will stay where they are, setter has to do a little run round, opposite middle already can stand in the right place, outside is just going to serve, step on court. So outside serves, the second the outside serves, setter runs this direction, outside steps on court, and we are all in base positions. And now onto the final rotation. We have our setter in their natural 2 spot. The outside is moved to the middle and they are at 3, and the middle is at 4. So obviously the middle and the outside in this are wrong, although they're the wrong way around. So what we want to do is stack again the middle, push them into the middle of the court, ready at the net, and the outside is going to stand just off their right shoulder between the middle and the setter, and they're just going to get ready to run over to this 4 position. In the back row, again, the middle is the server now, and as I've said before, the middle is playing in the 5 position for me in this rotation. So if the middle likes serving from here or is confident serving from here, get them serving over here because it saves them a lot of running than running all the way around. So because the middle is out of the equation, they are not considered in the rotations. The outside is just going to step back to this deep 6 position because they are already in the right spot, and the opposite is going to line up just to their left, and the second this middle serves, they can run across. So middle is your server. Middle can serve obviously anywhere he likes, but they will have a long run if they don't serve over here. Outside is already in the correct place. The opposite will be just off the left shoulder and just run straight across to their base position. And in the front court, the middle is going to stack with the outside nice and close to the net in this centre position. So all the outside has to do is run just behind them to the left here and get ready to block at 4. Middle at 3, setter is already in the correct place. So they'll run their rotations and end up in the same base positions that we've seen for the last 2. So the rotations aren't too difficult, like I said. It's more just about knowing where you need to stand and then understanding where you run to every single time. So when you're in the front court, you know that your spot is there on the court, and you just make sure that you stay in rotation, and then you just want to try and shorten the distance that all of your teammates have to run. So obviously in this situation, we wouldn't want to stack all the way over here because in the middle and the outside would have to do a lot of running. So we can just leave the middle and the setter in the correct place, and the outside can just have a short journey. So hopefully you guys found this helpful, and hopefully it has cleared up any confusion that you had previously with these 5-1 rotations. Obviously this was the 5-1 rotations for when you are the serving team. If you would like to know the serve-receive rotations and you haven't yet seen it, I have got a video on my channel, and I will put the card at the top now so you can see that one. With that being said, I hope you guys found this useful. If you feel like this could be useful for anybody else, please do share it. Give it a thumbs up, and if you like this sort of content, I'll be dropping lots more volleyball content in the future, so please do consider subscribing. Okay, thanks a lot guys, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.